So, this is the Gospel of Bliss, if one may call it, which we just read. At the beginning is bliss, at the end of the journey is bliss. In the middle, it is bliss concealed. So, why does it conceal itself? And that's where is the next logical question, that if already everything that is the origin and that is the end, so why this whole thing started? Now, this is the unanswered question. Sri Aurobindo gives a very amazing answer. All his answers are amazing. So normally in the traditional karmic theories, we put it like this, that, well, you are responsible for your pain because of your karma, you are suffering. Now Sri Aurobindo would tell us something very similar but in a very different way. And that is amazing, only he can do it, that he uses like as if people saw a part truth but not the whole. And he is revealing to us the whole truth. Let's first read it, because it'll be, a joy to get the revelation. O mortal, who complainest of death and fate, accuse none of the harms thyself hast called. This troubled world thou hast chosen for thy home. Thou art thyself the author of thy pain. Now this sounds for a moment like the traditional karmic theory. You chose to be in the world, so naturally you will suffer. It's not as simple as that. This is the part truth. But when we see the whole truth, it's amazing. Once, now he is taking us to a point beyond time. This cannot be known within the cycle of time. So he is lifting us suddenly to a realm beyond time and space. Once. Look at, sometimes one word is packed with power. Once. When is that once? Once in the immortal boundlessness of self. So this once is before time has even started. Once in the immortal boundlessness of self, in a vast of truth and consciousness and light, the soul looked out from its felicity. It felt the spirit's interminable bliss. It knew itself deathless, timeless, spaceless, one. So this is the moment, if we may use the word moment, or the state from which creation starts. When it knows itself deathless, spaceless, timeless, infinity. It saw the eternal, lived in the infinite. Very nice. So what is missing? Something is missing in that state. And that is the greatest of all adventures that we can ever experience. The adventure of the unknown. There is no joy if we know everything. And that the soul wanted. There is a joy of the adventure of consciousness and joy. There is one kind of joy that is missing, and that it wants to experience. Then, curious of a shadow thrown by truth. This is not a shadow which is other than that. Its own shadow of truth. It's trained towards some otherness of self. It was drawn to an unknown face peering through night. It sensed a negative infinity, a void supernal whose immense excess, imitating God and everlasting time, offered a ground for nature's adverse birth. After all, it is shadow of God. So it will have the infinity of God. It will have the feeling of eternity, as if it doesn't end. So that's how, when it is said that eternal hell, actually it's not eternal hell, but it imitates. When we are trapped in that state, it seems as if it is not going to end. because it's the shadow of that. It looks like it is so vast, nothing can happen, nothing can be done about it. Wherever we stretch, it goes further and further. So it gives that sense of infinity and eternity. It imitates God's calm, and that's inertia, indifference. It imitates God's consciousness, becomes an adverse power, a dark knowledge, a dark unconscious, which has the power to draw all things back into itself. So, this is how it imitates. Offered a ground for nature's adverse birth and matter's rigid, hard unconsciousness, harboring the brilliance of a transient soul that lights of birth and death and ignorant life. So the soul felt, this is something interesting. I have not known this. I have not seen this. I have not experienced this otherness of self. Let me plunge into it. And it enters. Still it remains carrying that bliss, but surrounded and submerged by that ground of darkness and nothingness. Till then it was okay. But still something went on. A mind arose that stared at nothingness till figures formed of what could never be. This is where the problem started. The biblical fall. The mind which spoils everything. Actually, till the human mind has come, and even, in the primitive mind, we call it primitive. I don't know, maybe it's primitive in terms of before. There is no problem. All these stories of Tarzan and early humanity, they are beautifully connected with the sense of oneness. But the moment mind comes, it literally has the mind looking at darkness and begins to, after a while, see shadows, blotches, patches. Mind forms, it gives form to inconscience, and that's what the mother says is the real difficulty. During one of her talks, she says that I was sitting there and looking at all this humanity. And I was wondering, why are people so unconscious? So she goes into that unconsciousness. It's exactly the same experience that Shubindu recounts just a little while back in Savitri, that he goes deeper and deeper and he discovers the supermind concealed behind it. So she went down, down, down into that unconsciousness through a very rigid and stifling passage. She's given this as one of the New Year messages. And that's a very stifling passage with hard, jagged rocks. And as she goes down and down, she says, I hit upon a spring that cast me up into the formless, vast, which is full of the seeds of the new world. There she discovers. That's exactly what we read in Savitri a couple of sessions back. That as he says the avatar goes down and down, he discovers that world, that border where all the worlds meet, the supermind which is concealed behind. So this is where she then commented upon this experience. This message is of course there in her works. So she says to the disciple that actually inconscient is not a problem, because inconscient is very plastic and free. It takes everything, whatever you give it. But mind has turned this inconscient into something very rigid, something very hard, and therefore it becomes difficult to penetrate it. That is the problem. So mind stared at nothingness till figures formed of what could never be. Take for instance death. Animals experience death without much broha, without much hullabaloo. Even early humanity takes it as part of the journey, growth, and that's it. But human beings, we all of us, we make such a to-do about death. That's what Shubindu writes in one of the letters. Mind has given death various kinds of images, scary images, frightening things. But somehow animals are instinct with this knowledge. It's part of life. They accept it as part of life, but we cannot. So we have given all kinds of figures. It housed the contrary of all that is. Hell, creation of the human mind. Heaven, creation of human mind. Even virtue and vice, creation of human mind. All this is mind has created duality, because it could not experience that vastness and infinity and live with it. Now, this is a passage. Mother speaks about it that now we have entered into this passage, so we have to go through it. We can't fall back to that earlier stage. Because we question now life, we have to have the sense of sin and good. We can't help it. But it's not something original. Now we have only one choice to go beyond it. There is no second choice. In naught appeared as being's huge sealed cause, its dumb support in a blank infinite, in whose abysm spirit must disappear. So it's literally like the spirit leaped. This is the story of the Rig Veda. And as it leaped, the soul slept. Spirit vanished out of sight. And the souls are struggling and searching for it. Where is Mama gone? Where is Mama gone? She then appears as nature. She then appears as Maya. She then appears as Shakti. She appears as Yakshini. She appears as Rakshasi. She appears as Asuri. She appears as Devi. She appears as the great goddess sitting atop, as Ishwari. So this is the whole journey. At every level, that power emerges, assuming the form appropriate to that level. This is very beautifully described elsewhere in Savitri and very powerfully in Sri Aurobindo's poem Ahana, where he describes there's some about 20 lines, amazing, about the goddess Dawn saying, these are the levels and these are my forms. At every level, I reveal myself to you. So it's literally like that we have gone in search of that power which has hidden itself. And she called. This is the whole story of redeeming first the fall and then the redemption. We have spoken about this story at different times. And again, once again in the Ramayana, Sita going and becoming a captive in Lanka and all the Ravana going in search. A darkened nature lived and held the seed of spirit hidden and feigning not to be. But actually, why does she feign not to be? See, we can understand by several examples. In the first stage, the mother is holding the baby inside the womb. The baby has to do nothing. Then the baby comes out. The mother doesn't want to keep the baby forever in the womb. The baby will die. Its possibilities will never emerge. So the baby comes out, and for some time the mother is all the time with the child. Then slowly she begins to, she doesn't want to vanish, but obviously she has to do her work. And the child cries. He believes that the mother is gone. So that's what is called in psychology as the stage of, when stranger anxiety and mother, once she's out of sight, the child believes that the mother is not there at all. But she's there. Then she comes and goes, comes and goes. Then a time comes, the child knows, no, Mama is always there. But supposing the child says, Mama, I don't want to go out. I want to always remain close to you, holding your pallu. Then mamas feel scared. Say, no, you must go. You must go. You have to grow and develop. I can't hold you always by the side of my apron. You have to do great deeds. You have to grow into the fullness of that which I have conceived. You are not just a physical conception. You are a conception in my mind, in my being. I have conceived you in my thoughts and feelings. I have conceived you in my very soul. That's how you have to fulfill it. So she vanishes. If the child doesn't leave, what would she do? No, you have to go. She vanishes. Then the child grows up and grows into a strong being. There are so many stories like that, but this is the sense of these stories of spirit hidden and feigning not to be. Even in greatest of darkness, the Divine Mother is there. The Divine is there. But it looks, because the darkness becomes a veil and we don't feel Him, even though she is leading and guiding. Eternal consciousness became a freak of an unsouled, almighty inconscient, and breathed no more as spirit's native air. So, time to time, she showed a glimpse and then vanished. It trickled here and there. And then again she vanished. So it's very nice because, the trickle keeps the hope alive, the glimpse, gives us strength to move on the path. And if she doesn't vanish out of sight, we will never grow. We will not search, we will not seek, and therefore we will not grow. So this is how the whole game plan is. Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us the whole game plan. Still, it's a real joy. Bliss was an incident of a mortal hour, a stranger in the insentient universe. As one drawn by the grandeur of the void, the soul attracted leaned to the abyss. It longed for the adventure of ignorance. This has its own joy. Whatever one may say, there is the joy. That's why people say that we had a strange thing in our army setup. There are a lot of do's and don'ts, strict do's and don'ts. So when I joined the Armed Forces Medical College, the next day they gave us, things, do's and don'ts. So one of the things they wrote was, these are the 20 places you should not visit. Now we said, okay, now we know where to go. They literally gave the names of 20 places where you should not visit. So everybody knew, thanks to the authorities' wisdom, where we need to go. Because if the authority is saying don't go, there must be something worth going. So that's how it is. Like, you create a space and say, no, don't open that door, don't open that door. No, what is there? No, don't open, there is nothing. There is nothing, why have you kept it closed? I'm telling you there is nothing. Sure enough, the child will go. This is how we are drawn into that great adventure. And when we grow, we discover, oh my God, this is not just nothing, but a frightening nothing. Or when we don't find anything, the mind conjures all kinds of images. So that is the experience, that it was attracted, longed for the adventure of ignorance. And the marvel and surprise of the unknown, this also has its joy. Imagine knowing everything about life. Either life will be too frightening or it will be too dull and boring. So one of the best part about life is that it has surprise. It adds to the charm of life. The strong soul loves it. The weak soul doesn't want it. It wants to know everything settled. But there is a joy of surprise. And the marvel and surprise of the unknown. And the endless possibility that lurked in the womb of chaos and in nothing's gulf, or looked from the unfathomed eyes of chance. So this is another reason. There is an endless possibility. The seed can grow into a tree, but first it must bury itself below the mud. Because there was something possible through creation, that's why creation is. A greater delight. The delight of oneness changing into a delight of finding. The delight of finding changing into a delight of union. When there is already oneness, there is no joy of finding, seeking and uniting. Somebody asked the mother, Mother, everything God has already decided. So why should we aspire? Good question. She says, you know what? When you aspire, it is true that things are already there. They are waiting to manifest. Of course, there are different answers, but here she has given a beautiful answer. She says, when you aspire and when God's will is fulfilled, then there is a joy that you experience. When we don't have something and it comes and we say, Mother, your grace. When we have no need, no requirement, no want, no wish, and it comes, we don't even value it. It just remains. So this joy that comes through seeking, there is a joy of seeking, a joy of the journey. And many people miss this joy of the path because they want the end. Oh, how much time? How much time? When will divine reveal himself? When will it happen? When will I have that experience which my neighbor has? This takes away the joy of the journey. There is a delight of the journey. Or we compete. My neighbor is going faster on the road to the divine. There are no competitors. Each one is going in his own way, at his own pace, and God is holding and carrying. Then there is a delight of the journey. We are not in a race where who comes first, God pats him more. So there are no, everybody comes first. Everybody is unique. So here is the first reason he gives why it has plunged into it. Because there was endless possibility in chaos. Why? Because when everything is formed and fixed, it's already there. But when there is chaos, then something new can emerge. So whenever divine wants something new to emerge, he creates chaos and confusion. Which means whenever we see great destruction leading to great chaos, that means something new is being prepared. The old mud has been broken for a new mold to come. Proof? 2 world wars. Such chaos and destruction. Birth of the spirit of unity, United Nations Organization, the League of Nations, the World Health Organization, the need for yoga, New Age, the New World Seekings. All because the 2 world wars broke all the molds everywhere. People saw the degradation of values, and yes, there was a degradation. But people didn't see the new emergence as a result. People had a chance to redo things. So this is the reason, endless possibilities, and doing it in so many ways. Manifesting infinity. The second reason, it tired of its unchanging happiness. It turned away from immortality. It was drawn to hazard's call and danger's charm. There is a Himalayan trek now. Somebody from ashram, I think, Tarak has started, and it's nice. Also, there is a paragliding going on in Pondicherry. There are surfing of the waves. I mean, these are all there. They don't, I'm not advertising. I don't even know who they are. And please, but no money transaction. But it's nice, interesting. Why do people go to Himalayas? Aren't they happy being just comfortable in their rooms? Why do they want to do paragliding? There is a certain risk involved. Para jumping. Why do they play dangerous games? Football and hockey where they can get hurt? There is a joy in that. That joy they can't receive when they are all in the divine. So this is another joy. The immortal soul said, okay, I'll take this joy. But for the joy to be real, it must veil its own immortality and face death as if it is something real. Otherwise, there will be no fun in the play. Real fun. That's how they show in Mahadev serial that Shiva and Parvati are playing chess. So, Shiva knows all the 3 times. So, this game will be very boring if they both know all the 3 times. So, Parvati says, look, this way game will have no fun. So, you play knowing all the 3 times, I will veil all the 3 times from me. I'll become Prakriti. Now the game has some fun. This is all right. But there will be no rule in the game because he is free. Parvati says, no, I'll decide the rules of the game. I am veiling all the 3 times, but I'll decide the rules of the game. Whatever rules I decide, you play. So that is how the game becomes interesting. Otherwise, there will be no joy. If everybody knows everything, everybody sees behind everyone the one Atman, very soon we will get bored of seeing the one Atman everywhere. So the one Atman must come in different forms, shapes, colors, far away. So that makes the joy of the game. So Sri Aurobindo is literally saying, it tired of its unchanging happiness. It was drawn to hazard's call and danger's charm. It yearned to the pathos of grief, the drama of pain, perdition's peril, the wounded bear escape. It's an epic on a mega scale, the epic of the soul. Now we have those, a new program has started coming, Dare to Win or something like that. I don't know, Akshay Kumar or somebody else, the famous director of... Anyways, so you do dangerous things. There was a movie like that, Luck. Very interesting, goes by the name of Fate, where they go through real dangers. Means where life, they can die. And people are betting on them. People want to watch it. Where real danger and death is involved. That's why we have bungee jumping. People are bored. There is no, what do? We are tired of happiness. Everything is there, money to spend. So let's do bungee jumping. Something different, something little dangerous. If nothing else, let's have horror shows. Something to, stimulate. So this is called the perdition's peril and the wounded rare escape. When you watch a movie and you see that, oh, this fellow is going through so much danger, what will happen? What will happen? What will happen? Sometimes even when we know that nothing is going to happen, it's decided, that serial Ashoka, of course he's going to grow up. He was a king. But when you watch that serial and that little child is going through, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? And then eventually last minute he escapes. And you say, that one is worth all that other things. The wounded rare escape. It's a different kind of delight. There is a kind of joy when mother looks after and everything is fine. There is another joy when you're on the brink of disaster. People often remember these moments. What a grace of the mother. This happened. And mother's grace. Mother's grace is all the time present. 24/7, 365 into life it is present. There is nothing but grace. But when do we notice it? When there is disaster's call. And we are saved. So perdition's peril. The wounded bear escape. The music of ruin and its glamour and crash. This is that beautiful in Ilion. There is a passage when Helen reveals her Kali avatar form. She is an avatar of Kali, like Draupadi, who has come to destroy that whole empire. So she goes into it, like Sita, but a different strategy. Now it is the other way around. So all these people come hunting after her. So there is a dialogue when first Priam asks her only one thing. Before the great battle, they have to decide yes or no. And Achilles had given them a very good offer. That Priam, if you marry your daughter to me, I will be on your side and then all these Trojans will not even dare to stand. So it's a very tempting offer. So Priam calls everybody, takes everybody's opinion. This is Sri Aurobindo Ilion. Beautiful. Then he quietly calls Helen and Paris. And he asks Helen only one question. Do you love my boy? There is nothing else. She says yes. She is done. We go for war. It's an amazing. He says, we'll fight a war for the dignity of love. It's amazing, All that he asks is, he doesn't calculate anything. Do you love my son? Yes. And then Helen sees that it's a sheer destruction of everything. And then she tells Paris, even as she is bidding him by, that great was the moment when I married Menelaus. Great when I crossed the threshold of his house. Great when you abducted me and brought me to this land. Great that nations shall go for war because of me. Great that civilizations collapse because of the beauty of Helen. That moment, she is not an ordinary mortal. Now we may think, what a ruin, disaster. But look at the grandiose music. We should appreciate even the tsunami, which is a laughter of Kali, rushing towards us, carrying everything inside. And if we have the strength to watch it, then we can understand the integral vision of the integral Godhead on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He tells Arjuna, when Arjuna says, who art thou? He says, you want to know who I am? Look. And he sees that all the nations, warriors, heroes, the Kauravas and the Pandavas rushing towards his mouth. And then he says, Arjuna, I am time the destroyer, Kalosmi Bhava. Why have you come, sir, on the battlefield to destroy all these people? It shakes our nerves. But ask the warrior Arjuna, at the end of the battle, with all that, this was the battle of his life. He had won many a times. He was the uncontested, matchless archer. But for this battle, Arjuna would not be Arjuna. This is the great battle. The wounded bear escape. The mature soul loves this adventure. But in the beginning, we are scared of it. So we want some door of escape. the music of ruin and its glamour and crash, the savor of pity and the gamble of love. Gamble of love, we just about the story of Helen. The pity, the savor of pity. See how Saul of Tarsus suddenly changes and turns towards Christ. He is persecuting all the Christians. He wants to wipe them out. And then in a great battle where he is killing, he gets wounded and he's asking for water, water, water. And suddenly he has the vision of Christ extending water to him. He says, "What? You have come? I'm killing all your devotees and disciples. You have come?" "Yes, I am love incarnate." And he changes. Now you see this moment of apocalypse. Supposing Christ walked into the life of Saul just like that, he would not value. This is another way that God stages his drama. So many ways he loves to meet. Sometimes he will walk into a life on the market. Suddenly he'll barge into us and say, "I am God." There is a joy in that. It has its own charm. Literally, my life, entering into a bookstore and seeing the synthesis of yoga, Sri Aurobindo. "Oh, who is this? I have never heard his name." And the name does something. And that's the beginning and the end of the story. In Connaught Place, of all the places he chose to initiate me in Connaught Place. Could have chosen a nice time, and that too when you are hungry, when you're looking for food and you... So divine loves, this is place, a sense of humor. He enjoys this. Why not? He should have a variety of ways. And we also love that variety. And passion and the ambiguous face of fate. A world of hard endeavor and difficult toil, and battle on extinction's perilous verge. A clash of forces, a vast incertitude. So this has its own joy. When we read Baji Prabhu, with 20 men or 50 men, Baji Prabhu holds out against 2,000 Pathans and Mughals and Rajputs through a narrow gorge. And Sri Aurobindo, beautiful in that whole destruction, death. When Baji Prabhu dies, you feel joy inside, not because, good he died. Because you can see this is the kind of death that man deserves. In fact, there's a nice little dialogue. Baji and Tanaji Malsore. So, Tanaji says, Baji, he says, "Tanaji, you go and bring Shivaji and artillery and guns and bullets because everything is over." So he knows that this fellow is going to die. So he says, "Tanaji, I know what is the fate now. But one thing I promise, when I come, I'll build such a pyre for thee as whole Deccan will see." So Sri Aurobindo replies through Baji. He says, "What, Tanaji? You will build a pyre for me? You really believe that I am this 5 foot 6 inches body? Me you cannot burn." He says, "Forget about building a pyre for me. Say that when you come there, we will meet together and embrace each other. And when it ends with, he sees, he is now left just with 3 men. Slowly everybody is going, and now suddenly when 3 men are there, Sri Aurobindo describes all the goddess came upon him. He is full of blood. And Baji Prabhu with his hand, Sri Aurobindo describes wipes of the blood from his eyes. It's a scene more real than television. I can assure you, if you read Baji Prabhu, a dead person can come to life. Near dead. Well, let me put it like that. I have experienced it with severe drips going with dysentery and all that. Somebody reading Baji Prabhu asked, "What should I do?" I said, read Baji Prabhu. And I got so energetic because it's like that. It brings almost the dead to life. And then suddenly he describes all the goddess came over Baji Prabhu. And her hair is flowing into heavens. He describes Kali. And then finally there is a lance which pierces him. And then as he falls, he looks behind and sees, yes, there is dust and Shivaji is coming. And he tells the lone survivor, just tell me that he is coming. So he says, yes, I have seen, heard the guns, and Shivaji is round the corner and Baji just slumps. And then you feel this is death. So this experience, the soul cannot have there. This is the problem. There is a joy in this. If you look at it like a play which is full of its own twists and turns, we are meant to conquer it, not to feel defeated. The challenge is there so that we can conquer it, and there is a joy of that conquest. A world of hard endeavor and difficult toil and battle on extinction's perilous verge. A clash of forces, a vast incertitude. The joy of creation out of nothingness. It's very easy to, when everything is provided and, you just say, okay, create it. When there is nothing, when there is no material, you see, that's why when people create out of waste material, it has its own charm. Oh, created out of waste. The joy of creating out of nothingness. Strange meetings on the roads of ignorance. The soul recognizing its answering soul across dividing paths of time and circumstance. The soul recognizes its answering soul. There is a great joy in that. Not that right from beginning you know each other and say, yeah, we are complementary beings. Great joy when it's just the opposite. And the companionship of half-known souls, or the solitary greatness and lonely force of a separate being conquering its world. So different ways that delight we want to experience, and delight wants us to experience the joy of hazards, of extremes, of creations out of nothingness, of strange meetings, of lonely greatness. All these would not have manifested if we were only there. So we come here for this experience. Called it from its too safe eternity. This is the problem. That the Divine Mother said, let's play a game. We said, yes, mother. What is this game? Well, we'll start with hide and seek. Okay, good. And then it will go into a real search and more seeking, and in intense agony and a greater ecstasy. Are you ready? All of us said, yes, mom. We came. It's a great game. Only, till we discover this truth, it's cruel to our perception. That too is necessary. It also helps us to feed the anguish and the redoubled. All this is part of a vast plan. Every stage, every step. He knows, and the soul knows the end. So it accepts the challenge. All right, doesn't matter. There will be moments when you will not even see me. All right, fine. You will suffer with the agony. Now, when we decided that, we knew that ultimately the end is the discovery and a greater delight. So that's why even the gods, see, the typical example is gods are close always to the divine. They have a free pass access to heavens. Anytime they can rush to Vaikuntha. We can't go. But they want to take a human body. If they want to go to something still higher, something that they miss, and this mother refers to, or Sri Aurobindo refers to much later in Savitri. The dark deities that leaped in revolt, they too are, to find what the white gods had missed, they too are safe. The mother's arms desires back her rebel sons. The dark deities, the Purva Deva, they jumped in revolt. And they found something which the white gods had missed. This is the great plunge. Okay. A huge descent began, a giant fall. Now, once it saw all that possibility, it said, okay, worth it. It was the first original bungee jumping. Except that it was very real and we crash landed. We didn't know. We don't see the other end of the rope. We just feel there is probably some rope somewhere. We just feel it sometimes on the back, but we don't know where is the other end. So time to time we are pulled up. So we actually landed on ground zero. For what the spirit sees creates a truth. Because it saw a possibility, so that truth manifested. And what the soul imagines is made a world. A thought that leaped from the timeless can become indicator of cosmic consequence and the itinerary of the gods. Imagine. The game was originally between the Divine Mother and the souls. We said, yes, let's play this game. And the gods had to hurriedly note, oh my God, a new game is going to start. We have to now manage things accordingly. They are part of the whole, they have to manage. Because titans will come, gods will come, everybody has to become part of the place. So itinerary of the gods. The soul decides and gods have to write it in their itinerary. They have to follow. They have no choice. So when Damayanti decides, I do not marry these fake Nalas, but the real one, whom my heart has loved. So now all the gods, it seems, conspire against her. But eventually, they end up bringing them together. And the whole story ends up in a very beautiful way. So that's why these challenges and the difficulties, that's why the princess is somewhere in a castle locked by an Rakshasa. All these stories, the beautiful princess, and she's waiting for the prince who will come and kiss her. And that one kiss becomes the kiss of a century. Otherwise, she would not value. So that one kiss becomes the master kiss because she's locked inside a castle of darkness. So this is a game, ultimately. She is the Prakriti, by the way, and this is the soul. We should not play this game. Dangerous. And the itinerary of the gods. A cyclic movement in eternal time. All the gods are now also come into the play. They have no choice. Thus came, born from a blind, tremendous choice. Why blind? Because if all the possibilities are already foreseen, there is no joy in it. Thus came, born from a blind, tremendous choice, not a foolish choice. There was meaning in it. That's why it was sanctioned. This great, perplexed and discontented world, this haunt of ignorance, this home of pain. There are pitched desires tents, grief's headquarters. Very interesting. Headquarters of griefs have pitched desire tents. So we go through the tent and we are enjoying, and they say, where? This is just a tent. What will be the original place? Yes, come, we will take you. They take us where? To grief's headquarters. This is the story in Mahabharata. Shalya is coming to fight. He is the mama of Nakul and Sahadev, the maternal uncle. So he obviously wants to fight from the side of Pandavas. So what does Duryodhana do? The original mafia don. All the tricks that we see today, he is the fellow who started it. So he says, doesn't matter. As they are coming, you just please him. Don't say who is doing it. So there are nice tents all through the way where they are greeted with nice, meva and, dry fruits and water and God knows everything good one can imagine. So they think it's Yudhishthir. So when they reach the last one, he says, okay, I want to meet Yudhishthir. Why Yudhishthir? What a lovely arrangement. I must thank him. By now he is already hooked and feels grateful. He says, why Yudhishthir? This is done by your other nephew, Duryodhana. Now he says, oh my God, what have I done? So he is now taken to grief's headquarters. Inevitable grief. This is how we are hooked. So here are pitched desired tents. Grief's headquarters. A vast disguise conceals the eternal's bliss. But behind all this, even grief and pain has bliss at its roots. So that comes later, because then the question comes, so what is it? We are trapped. We made a choice and we are trapped here. So what is the issue out of this? Is there an issue at all? And that is the next question of Ashwapati, and the answer. We will take it up tomorrow.